Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our continuing work with the soul of nations and the destiny of nations. We're going to emphasize a couple of things tonight because of the dire situation socially and in terms of health and in terms of the economy, especially in the United States at this time of choice. We're going to sound the second of the great invocations, which is powerful along the will line. Then we've come to that point in the book, The Destiny of the Nations, where we've looked at, let's say, the United States, we've looked at Great Britain, a little bit at Russia, we've looked at Italy, and now there are only certain of the nations at that time, about 75 years ago to 80 years ago, that the Tibetan was emphasizing and gave a detailed analysis. And France is one of those. So we're going to look at that relationship that France has to other nations and its place, and a very important place in the future of humanity and on behalf of the soul of humanity. I'd like to begin with this idea, this mantram, this powerful word of power about the Lords of Liberation, who were, we understand, responsible actually for the victory of the United Nations against the Axis powers. It was a kind of Armageddon, and the Tibetan has hinted at this, and I remember talking to a kind of grand old lady in the Agni Yoga Society. I guess she was one of the founders of it, the very first Ray woman. And she looked at the Armageddon as being the Second World War, or maybe the Great War from 1914 to 1945. This mantram was released to humanity at a very critical point when the Axis powers, especially Germany, were rampant over Europe. And I've set this to music, and I'd like to play the piece, and you can see the words. And let's kind of get into it, realizing that these powers still exist, the forces of obstruction, and are again mounting an assault on the welfare and even the survival of humanity as it is supposed to exist. They seek the enslavement of humanity. So we've been using this mantram at the beginning of our programs and sometimes at the end, and we will continue to do so through the election time and after, because the battle for democracy, which is there occurring in the United States, is a battle which will have repercussions everywhere in the world. So let us look at mantra number 2.
Sons of men, let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save, come forth the mighty one. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with fast intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth, the end of hope has come. Come forth, Almighty One. The hour of service of the saving force is now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, Almighty One. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The activate of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, Almighty One, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of
And this is the mantram that we will be using quite actively during these coming months, at least until Inauguration Day. You know, you might think that I have my mind principally on the United States. It's not that. The battle for democracy is taking place within the soul of humanity, and the United States is kind of the epicenter of this struggle. Perhaps it's because the original United Nations is found there, and perhaps because the headquarters of the United Nations and the city of New York with its as a planetary center on the 6th ray and as a second ray city will be important to the Christ under a second ray Aquarian regime which the United States represents. So this has implications for all of humanity. Now, I would like to, let's see if I can do this properly. I have a number of different, yeah, here we go. Okay. Now, you know, it's interesting because in the old days when the Revolutionary War in the United States was being fought out, and the attempt to remove itself from the oppression of the United Kingdoms, or the Great Britain's John Bull of the period, a kind of Taurian oppression. When that was happening, France was very important in the liberation of the 13 colonies into what became the United States of America. The idealism was very high. France furthered that. Of course, it had its own purposes too, because it was basically at war with England, an ongoing conflict, and to foment the defeat of Great Britain in its colonies would be advantageous to France. But the deeper idealism was there, of which the Statue of Liberty is a great sixth-ray symbol for a sixth-ray planetary center. I light the way. So it's in the relationship between these nations, with their spiritual aspect, their soul, and their more material aspect, their personality, that many lines of connection can be found in the great science of relations, the science of relations as applied to the nations of the world. We do need a science behind this. It's called, you know, political science that we have to study, but when you think of it, so much has been simply calculation and hegemony and the will to dominate and the rapacious demand for the natural resources of other nations. Hitler was a great example of that. He was a Taurus, and he looked at the other nations in terms of what they could provide for the German war effort and beyond. So let's read a little bit here. I'm naturally not going to finish this whole thing, but just a few ideas about France in the world. There are a number of references. It tells us here that there is a natural rapport indicated between the present personality rays, now that means they can change, of course, of Germany and Great Britain, both on the first ray personality. Yet a relationship can also be seen between France and Great Britain through their esoteric national mottos, namely, let's see, how does it go? With Great Britain I serve, and with France I release the light. I release the light. Okay. Now, I have to find my way back here. Right, I serve and I release the light. The symbol for France, it is found actually on the atomic plane of will under Libra. The symbol for France is the fleur-de-lis, which she adopted centuries ago under divine guidance. So a lot of these mottos, words of power, etc., are not randomly chosen. They are intended. Which symbol stands for the three divine aspects in manifestation. And the symbol for Great Britain under the same divine apportioning is the three feathers, carried as the arms of the Prince of Wales. Well, we're getting into heraldry here. This heraldry accords with the seventh ray, which is found more strongly in Great Britain, perhaps, but there are ways in which the seventh ray enters into the French demonstration. The Capricorn rulership of the personality of Paris, and somehow it's as if Virgo, which was one of the major signs with the previous solar system, seems to carry the seventh ray, even though inherently it does, even though the second and sixth ray are primarily coming through Virgo at this time. The scintillating and brilliant French intellect, with its scientific bent, is accounted for by the interplay of the third ray of active intelligence and the fifth ray of scientific knowledge. I think we might be hard-pressed to look for another nation in which both the personality ray and the soul ray are the two rays of intellect and rays of demonstrated mental power. Hence their amazing contribution to the knowledge and the thought of the world, and their brilliant and colorful history that has something to do with their Leo personality, and Leo bringing in not only the will to dominate, the will to rule, but the will to illumine. Be it remembered also that the glory of the empire, which was France, is but the guarantee of a glory of divine revelation which lies ahead in the future. Okay, well, it seems that France has, with some futility, tried to capture its former glory, but there's a greater glory lying ahead. And much connected with the Transfiguration, which is the third initiation, correlating with its personality ray, and uses the fifth ray primarily, which is its soul ray. But this glory, it will never be theirs until they cease living in the wonder of their past and go forth into the future to demonstrate the fact of illumination, which is the goal of all mental efforts. So I think with regard to the science of the soul and the method of taking the third initiation, France will have a strong role to play. When the intellect of the French is turned towards the discovery and the elucidation of the things of the Spirit, they will carry revelation to the world. So what a glorious future lies ahead, and we do have to think of these nations in terms of what they can offer to the questing soul of humanity, certainly much more than we suspect, or much more than is conventionally suspected. When their egoic ray, that's the fifth, dominates the third ray, the personality ray, and when the separative action of the fifth ray, even though it's the soul ray, it can be used through a separative personality, and when the separative action of the fifth ray is transmuted into the revealing function of this ray, so much light in that ray, then France will enter into a period of new glory. Her empire will then be of the mind, and her glory of the soul. Isn't that inspiring? If I were a French person reading this, I would find myself inspired and working towards the glory of the future rather than simply trying to reclaim the glory of the past. I must say that when nations try to regain their past glory, as Italy has tried to do in relation to Rome, as the Germans did with respect to the great Teuton, largely imagined, I think, and when the Japanese did in terms of the samurai culture, it led to retrogression, yes, and an axis of evil for the time. Now, a little bit more here. He's telling us which countries are feminine and masculine, or positive and receptive, I suppose. Negative is a peculiar word. We want to maybe use the word receptive. Some nations are negative and feminine, he says. Others are masculine and positive. So, femininity, India, France, the United States of America. This, regardless of the fact that India has a first-ray soul, France a fifth-ray soul. These are hardline rays. United States of America, yes, a second-ray soul. We would expect the receptivity there. Russia, the seventh-ray soul, and that's along the masculine line, but it's very synthetic. And Brazil, with its fourth-ray soul, yes, a natural candidate for the receptive and the feminine, the nurturing aspect. So France is included in that way. It tells us that Spain, Austria, and France are governed by the seventh, fifth, and third rays. Now that's along the line, I believe, of the personality. Spain with its seventh ray personality, Austria, fifth ray personality, and France, third ray personality. So, according to these rays on the hard line, they have a close interrelation. You have to admit this information is fascinating, and though he may extend it to other nations which were only formative at the time, it will still serve. The method of understanding the interrelations will serve. We really, of course, need somehow to go through this book entirely. I've been picking and choosing certain areas, but I think the science of politics, the fifth seed group, is going to be so important. It is now, but there's not much science in it. There's a lot of competition. But when we really begin to understand each other, now that's a different matter. If, for instance, the energy of the fifth ray which is the sole ray of the French nation, can make its potency felt in the stress and misery of the present world condition, and this, of course, was during the war and post-war, then to France may be given the ultimate glory of proving to the world the fact of the soul and of giving a demonstration of soul control. That's a true initiate status of the third degree, which is ruled by the fifth ray. The soul pattern may be translated by the genius that, when you have Leo in the fifth ray, genius is often found, but the genius of the French intellect, translated by that genius into terms which humanity can understand. And a true psychology of the soul may come into being. And basically, when you look at the methods of teaching, maybe I can go there. It's in Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1. Let's see if I can find this. 420 and 421 should be right around here. Well, yes, it is right around here, but I'm having a little trouble finding it. I know how to do it. I'll look up the word city planning, and I think maybe I'll be able to find it. And there are two references to it, and there it is. So the higher expression of the fifth ray, the soul expression, is the science of the soul, esoteric psychology, and we can see how well adapted the French intellect would be to this particular approach, especially given that Pisces is the soul sign, not the personality sign, as it is in the case of Germany, or at least has been. We don't know how often these change, They do change. And the Tibetan has not told us the manner in which they change or when they change. But these teaching methods, you can look on page 411 here, basically, 410, 411, for the ways in which the rays teach on the higher expression and their lower expression. Well, I find the subject fascinating, and I really believe it can tell us so much about how nations interrelate. But I think we have to not go into it anymore right this moment. In fact, what we need to do is go back to our meditation, or at least conduct our meditation at this point. But keep these things in mind, because basically, friends, we are studying the great science of relations. And when you work with Master DK, you have the possibility of becoming an expert, eventually, in the science of relations, which involves ray relationships, astrological relationships, chakra relationships, creative hierarchy relationships, all kinds of groups found on different planes and subplanes, their relationships. TK once commented, why must I use that word relationship so often? But he says, well, I can find no better word. So let's keep our pure reason warm, whether we use it in the abstract mind or a higher version of pure reason in the intuition. Now, I always ask at this point what it takes to be a real citizen, esoterically, of your nation. It has to do with your soul gifts, and it has to do with the gifts your particular nation can give to the soul of humanity. First of all, let's ponder, what is a true citizen of a nation esoterically considered? Let's ponder on this. And is there not some alignment with the solar angel, or let us say the angel of the presence of a nation, that can make of us, if we act on that alignment, a true esoteric citizen of that nation? Ask yourself, are you an esoteric, true citizen of your nation, and why? Think of your relationship over the years you've been in form with the nation which is principally yours. How have you interacted with its history, with its current and former difficulties and opportunities? Maybe something special comes to your mind. I know, although I live in Finland now, when I think of the United States, I think of the motto, "I light the way," and how the teaching goes forth from the United States. Just think, Madame Blavatsky was writing The Secret Doctrine, I believe, in New York. And that was the beginning of a great revelation. Alice Bailey, too. She came to the United States from Britain and worked in California and worked in New York That's a definite movement, a part of the destiny of I Light the Way for the United States. I can feel definitely aligned with that process. And with what process in your nation do you feel aligned? And as we focus on the subject and what our nation contributes, every nation, even though, they're at different stages of evolution, they do contribute something. And the more they mature, the more they contribute and have soul values they contribute. What are you contributing to the contribution which your nation has to make to the assembled souls of the nations, to the soul of humanity? And what more could you do? And do you have a plan for the doing, which will increase your contribution to what your nation is offering? Finally, your contribution one day will be realized to be under the impress of your major monadic ray. Maybe it's a long time ahead, but your soul ray will direct your contribution, your soul accumulations, your sub-monadic ray, any one of the seven. And finally, when the contribution is considered to be related to our Earth scheme, it will be your major monadic ray. really important to get a clear idea of what is your quality of contribution, or a few of them. You'll always be cultivating the quality of cultivation. We all have those. We are not yet liberated fourth degree initiates, are we? But we can be aligned with national purpose and ultimately with the soul of humanity altogether. One day the earth will be a great station of light, and humanity within it a station of light, and we can contribute to that. Every humanity on every planet has its own function, and here we are on the major Kundalinic center in our solar system. Not yet developed, but developing. But for that to take place, humanity in its soul and personality nature must become unified. And so let us say together, adding our concentrated thought and our fervent wish, let us say the mantra of unification. The sons of men are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all men love. And all this we do in the name of the Christ and for his sake, that whatsoever shall be asked in his name, and with faith in the response, shall see it accomplished. There is a great movement afoot, a time anticipated since the founding of the fourth kingdom of nature millions of years ago, is actually now with us. Our opportunity is great, and the demand upon us is onerous. So let us live the life that improves our individual spirituality, yes, but we can't do that unless the spirituality of the group or groups with which we are affiliated also increases. So we live the group life also, and that life of the larger group, our nation, and the life of that still larger group, humanity and its soul. Let these things be a reality to us, not just words. Let us penetrate through and beyond the words to the reality the words represent. And we will close our meditation with the music of the great invocation number 1, which seeks goodwill for all human beings and no doubt all kingdoms of nature. It's a great mantra, and it should not go out of use. Thank you for being here, meditating with all of us.